Great, welcome everyone. We're just waiting for a few more people to join and then we'll get started. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get us started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Place-Based Peer Learning Program. If you have not joined us before, welcome. This is our fifth event in our little series on data and evaluation. And these are intended, this type of kind of how-to session is intended to be a sort of practical session to help you build skills and develop your practice. And solve issues that you might be facing in place-based working. So this series is part of the Place-Based Peer Learning Program, which we co-created with different representatives from place-based programs from across England, focusing particularly on creative people and places, local cultural education partnerships, and the cultural compacts. But we welcome anyone who works in a place-based way at our events. The how-to series was developed in response to a request for expert guidance in skill building and problem solving, and as we are doing today, reaching into experts from other fields to find out and learn new ways of working. We offer other events also that kind of help build networking and workshops that dive deeper into topics. If you would like to connect with anyone afterwards, you can do so through our networking platform, and my colleague Lucy will put the link to that in the chat. I apologize, I should have self-described at the beginning. So I am a white woman with blue eyes and brown hair, and I'm wearing a yellow shirt and a white cardigan today. I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. We have Elene Cloete and Nancy Bobadilla. They are joining us from multiple time zones today. So Elene is joining us from Kansas City in Kansas in the United States, and Nancy is joining us from the Philippines. So thank you everyone for negotiating all of the different times of day. Today we are looking at how to build your community-led monitoring and evaluation practice. There's a guide for facilitating local data collection, analysis, and ownership. It is part 2. We are welcoming Nancy and Elene back. If you missed the first session, Lucy can put the link to the video in the chat. You can catch up at a later time. Just in case you missed the last time, Dr. Elene is coming from Outreach International. And Nancy, they're both coming from Outreach International. Since 1979, Outreach International has facilitated community-led development to sustainably address poverty-related issues worldwide. They currently work in 10 countries around the world, applying their unique approach to sustainable change on a daily basis. This session is going to focus on their expertise in community-led monitoring and evaluation. Elene, Dr. Elene, I should say, is the Senior Director of Research and Advocacy at Outreach International and has over 15 years of experience in community development programs in the nonprofit sector and rural socio-political contexts. Nancy brings over 25 years of experience in community-led development to her role as a trainer and regional coordinator at Outreach International, working primarily through regions throughout the Philippines. She also works internationally with different partners in other places like Cambodia and other places across, is it mostly Asia, Nancy? Well, I'd like to welcome you both today. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, welcome. I'm really looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you so much, Kina, for the introductions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and so we can also share our presentation here with you. If you give me 1 second. All right. Kina, if you can just give me a heads up to see that you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. Very good. So thank you. We are so excited and we are so grateful for this opportunity to be here today with you all. Again, thank you so much to Kina and for the invitation for us to present here. As Kina introduced, my name is Elene. I'm a white woman. I have blonde hair, greenish eyes, and I'm wearing a pink shirt.
Yeah, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy. I am a development practitioner from Outreach Philippines. Tonight, I am wearing a t-shirt. It's like a mustard yellow color, and I'm also wearing an eyeglass. I have a fair complexion, and as a Filipina, of course. And I have a long hair, straight hair, just up to my shoulder. And yeah, good evening, everyone from the Philippines.
Great. And we are so thankful for Nancy for being with us, even though it's already 8 p.m. Dinner time in the Philippines. So again, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. We are very, very happy to be here with you. So what is the timeline this morning or this afternoon, wherever you find yourself in the world? The overarching goal for us for today is to learn more collectively about the hows of community-led monitoring and evaluation. The first part of our session today is we're just going to briefly pause for those of you who joined us on April 18th, and for those of you who couldn't, we just want to give you a very, very brief overview again of what it is that we do. And that's going to set the foundation for you and also give you the context to understand more deeply our approach to community-led monitoring evaluation. And then we're going to talk you through our monitoring evaluation framework, and then also the accompanying workflow that is associated to that. Then we're going to get a little bit deeper into business using our framework as a guide. And we will talk you through some examples that we brought with from the Philippines. And we also, those examples are explicitly, to be more specific, from a community called Kapakulan. And the practitioner working there is Renan. Renan, you are with us this evening, right? Can you unmute and say hello?
Hello.
Hi, Renan. Hello. Thank you. So nice to have you with us. And then the second community is Santa Monica, and the practitioner working there with that community is Agnes. Agnes, are you with us? Can you unmute and say hi if you are?
Yes, Elene. Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, it's so wonderful to have you with us, Agnes. Thank you for joining. And then when we are done with introducing you to those case studies, we're going to move on to a last part. And that's where we are just curious to know more from you, what your comments and your thoughts are. And then obviously, if you have questions, we are very much looking forward to hearing from those. All right, so as far as part one is concerned, I'm going to hand it back to Nancy to give us just that very, very brief review of what our work is.
Yes, thank you so much, Elaine. So let me start with what we do. So many people in communities we support face poverty-related challenges such as no clean water, poor sanitation, and low income. But they often suffer from these challenges in isolation, not necessarily knowing that their neighbors are facing the same challenges as they do. And when they do want to address them by themselves, the problem can be overwhelming. But when they start to come together as a broader communities and start to work together, they see results and develop ownership over the results in the process. And when they are formalized into official organizations with leaders, they become even more effective at improving the quality of life in their communities. And then carrying a big water tank up some stairs, as you can see in the slides, becomes very possible. And that is exactly what we do. So we organize people into community-based organizations with operational structures and policies, and then we also strengthen local leadership. And we therefore bring people together. We remind them that they can do amazing things if they work together. And currently, we partner with 8 nonprofits around the world to implement community-led development within majority world context. You can learn more about our work and how we do it by clicking on these 2 QR codes as shown in the slides. And so let us hear from Elene. How does it work in practice? Back to you,
Right.
Elene.
Thanks, Nancy. Our work comprises of different sets of activities, and these sets of activities structure our work. The first pertains to issue development, and so here participants identify whatever challenges or whatever topics they want to address, and then we support them in supporting them in identifying solutions for those particular projects or those particular ideas. And then those solutions then become community managed projects or programs. So the second set of activities therefore linked to that particular kind of work, which is project development. And this then includes us supporting them in how to implement those projects, how to manage those projects, and also how to sustain them. Then the third set of activities that we focus on pertains to organizational development. And here we focus on supporting communities in strengthening their capacity, strengthening their leadership, and then also their organizational capacity and strengths. Alongside all of these activities, as we also mentioned last time, we foster, and we are very serious about fostering processes of experiential learning. And these follow cyclical processes of continuously evaluating and reflecting. Perpetual and ongoing evaluation and reflection activities for us are crucial because they increase people's awareness, not only of their agency and their efficacy, but also of the capacity that they have to initiate change. Now, in today's session, we are going to share with you monitoring evaluation activities that are specifically linked to the project side of the work that we are doing. Okay, now, one more thing and one place that I want to just quickly pause is we work within 2 different scenarios that we identify for community-led monitoring evaluation. The first of these pertains specifically to funder requirements. In some cases, community-led monitoring evaluation is a funder requirement, and then we then adjust and support communities to be able to require and adjust to those requirements from a funder. And we're going to give you an example of that later. Then the second scenario is where we facilitate community-led monitoring evaluation for groups to gain a deeper understanding of their context. And so in other words, these groups will gain access to data needed for eventual funding requests. And so those sets of data can then act as their potential baseline. Okay, so now let's go into it a little bit deeper. And what is the flow? What is the framework? Or what are the processes linked for us to facilitate community-led M&E within our work? I'm going to hand it back to you, Nancy.
Yes, thank you, Elene. So if you can remember last time, we spoke through the building blocks of traditional monitoring and evaluation. Well, at the community-led focus, we work to include these elements or blocks into the work. These are the crucial elements that need to be included, and these are the ones we then work hard on ensuring that they are community-led all the way. Now, as far as our process for implementing community-led M&E is concerned, we have refined it to be 7 steps. And the first step is review of the issue and the project goals and objectives. including developing the overarching evaluation and research questions. It is during this step that practitioners facilitate the value of monitoring and evaluation and data. Why is it important? And what can communities do with their data? And then step 2 is to identify and develop data collection tools or survey. Here, the practitioners will also facilitate different ways of knowing. So depending on the evaluation question, the practitioner will support the community in identifying whether they will need qualitative or quantitative or both sets of data. And this stage will also involve training. In case you are using online platform like Kobo Toolbox or Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey. So if communities do not feel comfortable yet using this platform, this is the stage where you will also facilitate this kind of training. So, and then step number 3 is pre-testing or role-playing data collection. And this is where you will practice with community members the actual data collection processes. And we always encourage practitioners and leaders to emphasize comfort. And community members who will collect data must feel super comfortable with the tools they are using and understand the questions very well. Additionally, the pilot is crucial to see whether the data collection instruments will actually be good in collecting valid, credible, and trustworthy data. But this is not always that big of a challenge, because if the data collectors were also involved in the formulation and then also the development of the data collection tools, they will already be very familiar with the tools itself and also be very ready to know what to expect during data collection. And then step 4 is actual data collection, including the constant review of data. So in the case of quantitative data, supporting community members to review their data to see whether there are any cleanup or refining or reviewing needed. And then step 5 is analyze the data. So if the community is using a tool like Kobo Toolbox, they will be happy with the immediate reports the tool creates. Alternatively, they will perhaps use Excel to create summary tables for their quantitative data. For qualitative data, the analysis part would then involve participatory coding of the data and looking for overarching themes and categories. And then step 6 is data validation. So we take the validation of both qualitative findings and quantitative results very seriously. We therefore encourage our community groups to do these kinds of meetings for sharing the results more broadly. And it also just feels right because community members provided their data, so they should now see what their leaders did with the data, with their data. And then lastly, step number 7 is data dissemination and usage, as in for project proposal or for project report. And this is the step where the community group put their results into a report. And that is, they have to show results, pre and post program or project implementation, or into a proposal for showing baseline data. Now, if you can remember, we mentioned earlier that perpetual learning is key to our work and raising the awareness of people on their capacity, efficacy, and agency. And this also applies to the community-led M&E process. That every after major monitoring and evaluation activity, practitioners will have to do a very short but very engaging evaluation and reflection activity. And what does this look like? So those involved in the activity will reflect on the activity they participated in by responding to the following guide questions. Why are we doing these activities? What are we learning from these activities? And then they will evaluate on the same activity, and the guide questions for those would be, what do we think about these activities? Are there improvements needed? So eventually, participants get very used to these guide questions. And this means by the time the evaluation and reflection activity comes around, they already know what to reflect on and what to evaluate. So this is the flow of activities linked to a community-led monitoring and evaluation for us. And it looks like, it looks like that framework as shown in that slide. You see? So now, what does that framework look like in practice? So let me introduce you first the community of Kapakulan. And that community is located on the island of Masbate in the Philippines, in the south of the Philippines. So the community of Kapakulan wanted to address their massive challenges around water access, both from a health and financial perspective. And they secured funding for a solar water system project that would service about 400 households. And the funder requested that they refine their project proposals, monitoring and evaluation system so that it becomes community-led. And Renan is our field practitioners that supporting this community. And how did Renan support the group in Kapakulan to develop and then implement their community-led M&E system? So because they already had their project objectives developed, Renan and the group took another look at these objectives and then considered what their corresponding evaluation questions could be. So they refined it to focus on community members' ability to have within reach, easy, clean, and affordable water. And the group then identified their indicators as the number of households having access to water before and after, and then the price household pay for their water, and then also the distance from their homes to a water point that is safe and has water availability. And then they also decided on their sample at this time, and they wanted to have the opinion of all the households in their community. So that means that is 100% sample. So with these questions and indicators formulated, Renan and the group move onward on the next step, and that is identifying what kind of data they will need and also what method is best suited for this. So their evaluation questions and also indicators urge them towards needing quantitative data, and therefore that method is survey. And they develop manual surveys on a broadsheet. So, and during this time, they also identified their data collectors. So they piloted the survey, practicing it among themselves to see whether the questions are clear and easy to answer, and also whether they will get the responses they thought they would get. And they could also determine the length of data collection. And then they started with data collection. So collecting data from 399 households. And throughout, they checked for data quality. So in the meantime, Renan introduced them to Kobo Toolbox. So Kobo Toolbox is an online application or platform that allows for really easy survey development and data collection using cell phones. And Renan and the leaders faced the digital divide because they had to start at scratch, as in basic computer training, including creating an email account, etc. And then they developed their survey on that platform and then encoding all their survey data. And then, so Renan could have introduced them to Kobo Toolbox before they started data collection, but he wanted them to experience how different manual data collection is from doing it with a digital platform. So after they encoded all their data, Kobo was able to create immediate data visualizations for them on their baseline data. And then the group validated the data with the rest of the group during a general assembly, And then they, with Renan's support, of course, notified the funder that they have collected baseline data. And they shared it with the funder and they were good to go. And all of these activities happened in 2022. So exactly 1 year later, Renan then facilitated with the group the collection of end-line data. And this time, it was so much easier because of Kobo Toolbox. So Renan followed the same 7 steps, including refreshing them on their baseline and creating excitement around end-line data collection, and also around how they will now be able to see to what extent their project was successful. Additionally, since they now had both baseline and end-line data, they had to do a comparative analysis, and they did this with Excel. So following this experience in doing community-led M&E with their water project, the group has, since they have done the same for their Rice Loan project, and they have also collected data on their educational concerns in their community, their neighbors in the community of Hagmang has done similar great work. And you can learn more about both these groups' community-led M&E work in these 2 publications. As you can see in the slides, you can click those 2 QR codes. Yeah, those are 2 publications about Kapakulan and Hagmang community, based on their experiences on community-led monitoring and evaluation. And as we mentioned earlier, it is important for us that participants are aware of the work they are doing and also about how they are becoming stronger in the process. This means that Renan and Karen, Renan is our field practitioners assigned in Kapakulan, and Karen is our field practitioners assigned in the community of Hagmang. And they would facilitate evaluation and reflection sessions with the community they support using the questions I shared with you before. So that is how we do it in practice. That is the framework, and that is how we did in the village of Kapakulan. And now we are going to a different community in the Philippines, and Elene is going to share it with us right now. Over to you, Elene.
Thank you. That's right, Nancy. It's with so much pleasure that I introduce you to the community of Santa Monica. And Agnes, as I mentioned earlier, is the practitioner there. Agnes, are you still with us?
Yes, Elene.
Great. Hi, Agnes. It's wonderful to have you with us. So everything that I'm sharing with you today about Santa Monica is more through the eyes and also experiences that Agnes shared with me as she has worked with her colleagues in that community. Now, Agnes worked with them on several issues, but one of those issues was specific to addressing food insecurities. And that is particular as far as hardships are concerned with high rice prices, low income, and then subsequently how that impacts their household's food insecurity. Now, Santa Monica fits into that second scenario that I spoke about earlier. At the time of Agnes and the group doing this process, they had yet to apply for funding. And the funding that they wanted to apply for was for a rice loan. But before doing that application, they wanted to submit with their proposal really, really strong data that can reflect their community's food insecurity challenges. So similar to Renan in Kapakulan, Agnes then also followed the 7-step process. And she started with her community in step number 1. She worked with them to identify then an overarching research question. A first question that emerged through their discussion was about scope. So in other words, including the financial burden of borrowing rice, the frequency of food insecurity at home, and also, of course, how many households are experiencing these particular challenges. So very quantitative in nature. And since this question is all about the manys and the hows or the whats, Agnes then together with the community decided that they were going to develop surveys to collect the quantitative data, very similar to what Renan did. But Agnes also facilitated with the group that the numbers only provide one side of the story. They might need an additional question to get the full picture of what the impact of food insecurity is in Santa Monica. And to that end, they then ended up formulating a second question. How does food insecurity impact you as a mother and you as a family? And a question that is then in nature qualitative. These questions that Agnes formulated with them were also done during General Assembly, and there were about 80 people present. So it was a large group through which who collectively facilitated this particular question. Okay, so I'm going to focus now on what Agnes did for the qualitative side of the question. Now, Agnes introduced then through what method she needs to do. She then introduced the team and the group to the method of photo voice as a possible way for them to collect their qualitative data. What is photo voice? It's a qualitative method where participants typically take photos in response to a particular question. And then these photos and then the accompanying descriptions of the photos, that then becomes the reflection of people's worldview and then the qualitative data that will eventually be analyzed. Now, the group in Santa Monica, they were very excited about the method, seeing the possibilities of how it can be used for them and by them to collect the data and the stories that they need for describing the situation in their communities. But they decided together with Agnes that they want to modify the process slightly because they wanted to add workshops to it. So in other words, to add a little bit of a focus group discussion to it. So they decided they also want to stage the photos because they truly wanted to reflect the discussions they would have during their focus groups. And what they ended up having then was a kind of a photo voice mashup, which is very, very exciting. Santa Monica has 5 hamlets. So the groups and Agnes and the leaders then decided for data collection purposes that they will divide the process into the different hamlets. And within these hamlets, that is where data collection will take place. They assigned a team leader and additionally 2 more leaders to each of these hamlets who will be in charge of data collection. And then they went home after the meeting and then data collection officially started. Then in these respective hamlets, they assigned leaders who then conducted the workshops. And in these workshops were about 4 to 5 people per hamlet. In total, the sample size across all the hamlets ended up being about 25 people. And each group then also had the material they needed to facilitate this particular workshop. In each of these hamlets, the assigned leader then facilitated their focus group discussion with the overarching question in mind. First, they discussed the question in their little focus group, and then they wrote down the answers to these questions. And then in their small focus group setting, they brainstormed what would be appropriate images that could illustrate the answers that they have been brainstorming. Then they planned on a photo shoot. They planned on who will participate in the shoot, who's going to stage the photos, what would the photos look like. And then they started with the actual photo shoot, which is very exciting. Here you can see in this photo, the staging of that photo and one of the leaders then taking the actual photo. All right, then they moved into the next stage of the data collection process. They printed out their photos. In some cases where they did not want to stage the photo, they looked toward the internet to find photos that reflect for them in a deep way the discussion they had. They printed those out, they put it on a collage paper like you can see here in the photo, and then they also added the captions for each of these photos. And in addition to that, the leaders also wrote out very detailed explanations reflecting the focus group discussions they had on and in response to their research questions. And that then made them ready for presentation for the larger group. So they're going to take each hamlet, taking back their data to the bigger group. All of these activities took about a week, and that made them now very ready to present and analyze their data within a larger group setting. And that's then step number 5. Coming back to the bigger group, The different spokespeople from the different hamlets then present their data and also their explanation for their data, which is in the form of the photos. And then that set them up very nicely for the analysis part of the process. As they were doing that, Agnes shared that the groups very naturally identified similarities in the topics that they had in their respective groups. And then Agnes also facilitated with them then the analysis of these different data sets that came up. And that involved that as a group, they had to identify overarching categories for their data. They then collapsed those categories into smaller categories. And then the additional step after having those categories, they then further collapse them into overarching themes in response to the questions. And here in this picture, you can again very beautifully see they have their research questions at the top of the board and then the big overarching themes on the side. And here they are reorganizing their captions, reorganizing their themes so that they can fit into these overarching themes that emerged from their data. Okay, so then the next step is, of course, data validation. And because all of this happened within the big group, Agnes was then able to facilitate with them different questions that involved and include, do these themes reflect your reality? Do they reflect and do they accompany the discussions that you had within your respective discussion groups? And then, of course, are we missing anything? Is there anything that you discussed that is not present on the board at the moment? Or is there anything else that you are thinking about in response to the research question that we did not get to? And then in a group setting, they then validated their data and member check is done, on the spot verification done, which is a beautiful process. And then that takes us to the last step, which is the reporting and the usage stage. In addition to the qualitative data, as I mentioned earlier, Agnes and the group also wanted quantitative data. And so now they had two sets of data, and that was ready for them to then include in a funding proposal, which they then included into a report and which they have submitted in the meanwhile to a funder for potentially funding their food program. And in this funding request, they also made very explicit, look, we as a community, we have baseline data, and as part of our monitoring evaluation plan, we will collect data upon a particular course of time or over a course of time to reflect change within our community. So as a final show, I just want to pause here at these 7 steps again. Our practitioners and our colleagues in Cambodia have facilitated the same process. Here you can see in the photo a little slight adjustment to the photo voice approach. Here, community leaders and groups in Cambodia decided they want to draw instead than have photos. And that's a beautiful process. And I think I have colleagues of ours from Cambodia here too, Vong and Ratana and Savut, and they are here too. And then we followed the same process also again in the Philippines in different areas. Red, are you with us? If you can unmute and say hello. Red is the practitioner in the photo. Red, are you with us?
Yes, Elene, hello, good evening.
Hello, hi Red. And this is Red, and he facilitated a very similar process, but he also, the community groups decided that they don't want to take photos, instead they want to draw. And so there was a nice little mashup as far as that is concerned too. All right, so, and both Agnes, Red, Ratana, Vong, across the different settings, as Nancy mentioned earlier, throughout the process, there would always be evaluation and reflection activities to enable that deeper learning for participants to understand and also become aware of how they are becoming increasingly engaged in the process and also how they are changing as far as capacity is concerned. All right, now we brought with a video and we want to show this evaluation reflection process with you. This is a video that comes out of the Philippines. So we just got to go back to Kapakulan. And we wanted to save this video toward the end because it's very special. Here you're going to hear firsthand from the participants of Kapakulan about the process that they went through in their project, as well as the evaluation and reflection component of that. So over to them.
Kami po ang SPPC Kapakulan, matatagpuan po sa Kapakulan, Milagros, Masbate. Ako po yung president, saka ito po yung mga leader namin at officer.
wala po kami sapat dati na kakayahan na makapag-supply yung aming barangay o yung aming mga tao dito na makaigib sa malapit, makakuha ng malinis sa tubig. Base nung sa survey namin noon, umabot sila ng 1,200 per month yung nagagastos na tubig.
Yung pangsaing namin, pang sabaw ng mga sa mga ulam namin, yun ang binibili namin sa ibang barangay. Sana yung masisave namin sa pera namin, pandagdag sa pang-aral sa mga bata, pagkain, doon ang pupunta sa tubig.
Merong project ang barangay, yung BUB nga. Pero hindi naman natuloy dahil nakulang nga sila ng budget, sabi nila. Tapos meron din project ang barangay, yung mga puso dyan. Mga 3 puso, meron din doon. Saka doon sa bukid. Saka dito sa amin. Hindi sapat yun, hindi talaga uubra sa aming kailangan sa buong barangay. Isa po sa napag-usapan namin yung kawalan ng malinis na tubig. Nagpasa po kami sa Outreach International ng proposal, din na-approve din naman siya sa madaling panahon. Din inilosan agad namin nung Mayo 2022. Yung mga solusyon po na aming naisip noon, yung tangke i-repair. Then bibili kami ng solar panel, bibili kami ng battery, distribution pipe, inverter, controller, then pusit na semento, steel bar. Then pupunta kami ng RSI para ipatis yung tubig para sigurado na malinis. Then pumunta kami ng municipal engineer para sa project planning. Bayanihan po kami sa pagkilos ng project kasi yun lang naman ang pinaka-counter namin, counterpart.
Paglatag ng mga pipe, nagbungkal kami ng lupa, tapos binao namin, tapos yung sa denomination, si Kapitan naman ang aming pinuntahan. Si Kapitan ang nagbigay ng donation sa kanya yung lupa.
Diba kailangan namin mag-survey o magkolekta ng datos sa amin po komunidad para malaman po namin kung talagang kinakailangan po ng barangay. Kasi para malaman namin kung saan talaga namin ilalagay yung Igiban Center. Para din malaman namin kung makakatulong po ba talaga ito sa mga tao at na-save po yung oras nila sa pag-iigib. Yung gamit sa amin, hindi na po kami nahirapan na maghanap kung saan yung area na dapat lagyan. So nagamit din namin yung datos na yun, yung baseline, para po maipagtanggol din po namin yung ginagawa namin proyekto.
Saka kami yung namamahala ng proyekto, kaya kami talaga ang magkuha ng datos.
Nung nag-survey kami sa baseline, yung ginamit namin papel at saka ballpen. Kumbaga actual po namin pinuntahan sa bahay, tsaka mas matagal po yung proseso namin dun sa baseline. Ang nasurvey namin lahat sa aming baseline ay 399 household. Doon naman po sa endline naman po namin ay nakasurvey naman po kami ng 412 at ang ginamit na po namin doon ay Cobotol Collect o yung Cobotol apps kung saan mas napabilis po yung aming pag-survey.
Kampante lang po ako kasi kapwa member ko lang naman po ang nagtanong sa akin. Medyo hindi po kakabahan dahil sa samahan lang naman po.
Yung baseline namin, nagamit kasi namin yun para dun sa endline data. Kasi nga yung baseline namin, na-kumpara po namin kung nakatulong po ba kami.
Ang impact doon sa amin water system, malaki. Hindi na masyado nahirapan yung tao sa pag-igib ng matagal dahil na bawat purok na mayroon siyang igiban center.
Ginagawa namin sample yan, lalo na kung pupunta kami ng LGU, ginagawa namin sample yan sa mga request letter, pinagmamalaki namin yan. So doon nila babasihan na itong grupo na to nag-work talaga.
At kaya
Kasi may nakikita silang basihan na may proyekto pala to, maganda pala ang sama nito.
At kayang i-manage ma'am ang
Kaya pala
proyekto
magmanihan,
ng grupo
no?
na to.
Ino-operan ako yung nag-MAPS meeting kami. Ino-operan ako ng land bank. Sa aming group po 5 million inulong. Ang requirements lang ay duly registered ka.
Kinakailangan po namin na may kakayahan po kami at kaalaman sa pag-handle po ng proyekto para po mapanatili namin na maging sustainable po yung project namin. Ingatan palagi yung datos at palaging i-double check kung ito ba ay tama. Kasi mahirap po magkamali sa datos kasi mahirap po mag-troubleshooting kasi pag nandito na po ito, nakapasok na po ito sa system.
Okay, and as you can hear, there are very supportive roosters in the background too, also in favor. Also in favor.
Sorry for the chicken.
So we want to conclude by just saying the following. It's a call to action, actually, that community-led monitoring evaluation for us is a continuous process. We would encourage practitioners, implementers, organizations, funders to invest time and energy and thought into community-led monitoring evaluation. Because as we listed in our session in April, we continuously are being amazed about the benefits of this particular process. At the same time, we are also saying that experimentation is key. Why is that? Because not all contexts are the same. And so practitioners will know best what can work where, how, and to what extent. But we are very much adamant that business as usual can be challenged. And therefore, we want to invite you as practitioners, implementers, community members, community groups, community leaders, regardless of your role, to join us in facilitating and experimenting and experiencing community-led M&E. Not only is the power of data increasingly visible and evident to us, but also to our community members. And we are also learning more about the possibilities and often hidden potential of our community partners. They can most definitely collect data. They can formulate very interesting and engaging questions. They're excited about these processes, and they are more than ever and increasingly more excited about learning more and doing more of this kind of work. So let's go ahead and let's support them in doing this kind of work. And we are also 100% certain that these processes can be applied and is applicable across various sectors. We shared with you the sector within community development specific to food insecurities and also as far as water insecurities are concerned. But we are very much determined and also convinced that these kinds of processes can be applied across all kinds of different sectors and spaces of work. All right, we're going to stop there. Nancy and I left our email addresses in here. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts that you want to share with us directly, or you have any follow-up questions as far as our process is concerned, please reach out. Nancy and I are always very excited and very, very open and curious, and also wanting to respond to any questions or comments you might have. But there I'm going to stop, and I'm going to hear whether there are any questions or thoughts or comments from you all as far as this work is concerned. So I'm just also going to stop sharing so that that we can see. So we did see Agnes here. Thank you, Agnes. We are showing you again. All right, there we go.
Thank you. That was so interesting. I love the use of the photos and the drawings. That's really fantastic. If anyone has questions, please feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the chat, and I will read it out. I think I have a question to get us started. And this was just, I noticed that one of the examples sort of said that they applied to you. So I was just wondering kind of how projects come your way a little bit.
Okay, that's a very good question, Kenna. Very few project funding proposals come our way. We have a very, very small budget allocated toward project funding. And so when they do come our way, we treat them as any other kind of funding and as any kind of proposal. We review them, we have a criteria that we look at. And it just happens so that this water system was a project proposal that came our way for review. But most of the time, most of the projects that our community partners implement, they get funding from that, from local sources, from local resource institutions, from government agencies, and so on. So it just happened that this was an example that they submitted their funding request to us. Yeah.
Yeah. One of examples, Kenna, in the community that Karen supports. So one of the issues the group tackled is the malnutrition in children. And so the group were able to access resources from the provincial governments. One of the officers from the provincial governments who have this program on nutrition. And they were able to provide, receive resources to feed, regularly those children who have measured underweight, for 6 months, feeding. And they were able to implement that project with systematic community-led monitoring and evaluation system. And that is also the reason why, one of the platforms that they use is Combo Toolbox, and Combo Toolbox decided out of thousands of community groups who have submitted blogs article to Combo Toolbox. So the community of Hagmang was selected to be featured because of that experience in their project development in Hagmang community.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. So let's see. This is a question from Marge. Are the community members paid for their time? We've been working with community representatives to support and develop our evaluation frameworks. Oops, hold on. I need to make this window bigger. Support and develop our evaluation frameworks in various methodologies, like most significant change, but the full process must demand a lot of time. Also, how do you, oh wait, we'll answer that part first. So yeah,
Yes.
how do you compensate people for their time?
Yes. Let me just, I cannot pass this moment by to also say to Marge, most significant change stories is fantastic. And we've also used those. It's a method that very beautifully lends itself to participatory forms of monitoring evaluation. So thank you for reminding me of that method. It's wonderful. Now, we do not pay our community members. They do this work voluntarily. It's part of their commitment and part of their involvement in capacity development training as part of our intervention. So all the work that they do is voluntary. The community leaders are the ones that take on most of the work. And I do agree with you, Marge, it's a lot of work and it's a big time commitment. And they take on all of the work. But we have learned from them and through them that for them, the capacity development that they get from this, the training that they get in the process, makes it worth their while. So for them, it's sort of that, yes, it's a lot of time, it's a large and big time commitment, but the capacity strengthening, the skills development that we are getting out of it, and then continuously reflecting and evaluating on how much they are learning, for them, that is the cost benefit analysis that they do. So that's number one. The second thing that I want to share about community members and the voluntary component of it, because they are involved in activities that are linked to projects, they benefit also from those projects. So in the case of the water project, they are directly involved in those activities linked to that project, but they are also recipients of water. They are also recipients of the food projects. So they are seeing their work paying off in what they are getting through their projects, if that makes sense. So there's those two levels. It's more that it's the capacity strengthening, the leadership development, them recognizing that they are growing on a professional and personal level. So that's the one. And the second thing is that they are also benefiting from the tangible outcomes and outputs of the projects that they are involved in. So that's the first part of that question. You know.
The second part of the question, thank you for your answer to the first part. The second part of the question is also, how do you quality assure the resulting data, and how much are professionals involved or the community members trained in some of the data collection techniques?
Yes, yes, that's an excellent question. And March, we are increasingly working on ensuring data quality. Now, what we do, and Nancy reflected just a little bit on that during her side of the presentation, when there's data collection, the leaders come back, or the enumerators, they come back periodically. And Kobo Toolbox, if it's quantitative data and we're using Kobo Toolbox, that data is immediately uploaded into Excel sheets. And then our practitioners support the leaders to look at the data and to see where there are gaps, or where there are maybe problems in the data, maybe where they have missed things. They then reflect on the data quality on a very, very periodic, frequent basis. And if need be, they will go back and collect data if they missed something, or if they feel that they have to go back to that particular household and just do another round of questions. What makes that easy, in my opinion, or easier, is that personal connection that the enumerators have with households. They are not strangers. They are living within the communities, so they don't have to come from the cities back. It's not that aspect. They can go back and they can say, hey, remember I was here 2 weeks ago. You know what? There's that one question. I just want to double check with you on that question and the quality around that. So that's the one side of it. And then, as Nancy also shared, part of our process, one element that we built into our framework is the role play and the practice. And so during that role play and practice, it's very, very important that the practitioner then check on how comfortable and how familiar are the data collectors with the questions. Why are they asking these questions? Why are there these particular answer responses there? So that they can double check when they collect data, to what extent are the households providing them responses to the data that is actually needed. And that's the kind of training that we do. But Marge, it's really experimental, and it's a work in progress, and incrementally, it's all training too, right? It's all about capacity training in the process too. I hope that responds to your question. Nancy, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think, well, in the case of Kapakulan, for example, we are fortunate that, the group of Kapakulan, there are participants, especially among the leaders, who have this, the education's level is like high school level, secondary level. And they are very eager to learn about computer, despite the fact that they are in this digital divide region, So they are very eager to learn, and therefore we are, they were very excited when they learned how to use laptop, how to export data, from the Kobo Toolbox to Excel, and how to insert graphs, to make the report more visualized. Those are the things that very exciting and amazing to observe with the group in Kapakulan.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really exciting skill set, right? To be part of.
Yes.
So a question from Laura: do you bring together your evaluation work across all your different projects at all? And how do you find that works with the community evaluation being so bespoke to the individual projects?
Yeah. That's also an excellent question, Laura. And, from an implementer standpoint, it makes for aggregation. It brings challenges when you think about aggregation, right? Because they are so specific and so individualized to a particular context. But what we are starting to do a kind of aggregation across all the evaluations done in Cambodia, specific to their sanitation projects. And this might not come as a surprise, but there are always 2 or 3 or 4 questions that are similar across all of those different areas. And then that allows for aggregation. And because, you know, whilst there are contextual nuances across communities, some of the bigger overarching challenges are very much the same. And that allows for aggregation. And we see in the data that that is possible. So I don't know if that responds to your question, Laura, but it depends, I think, on the kinds of projects that we do. And then I do also want to add the following thing. From us as a stakeholder, I think it's pretty okay to also work with our community groups and ask them to include one question that we know we want to aggregate across all of programming. And community members are open, we have found, you know, so like, oh yeah, we'll allow a question of our funders in our evaluation program. That's okay. We will do that for you. You know, it's that kind of thing. And the more you can include those kinds of questions, then the more you can have that aggregation across all programs, in addition to then the, you know, the contextual specificness of the evaluations. Well, that's a great question. Thanks, Laura.
And lastly, I don't want to hold people for too long, but we'll see if we can wrap up with this last question. It's very inspiring to see how communities are engaging in evaluation and data collection. Does it ever go wrong? And how do you learn from that?
I had a conversation with colleagues, Nancy, I haven't even told you this. I had a conversation with colleagues from a different organization yesterday. And I said to them, you know, my dream conference is a conference of failures. You know, but you'll just have it in a different way. You'll talk about pivot points, right? And because I think where the learning is in those areas, in those spaces where things went wrong and you had to pivot, where, you know, where you develop together with community groups a research question or evaluation question, and you realize what you had intended and what you thought they were going to come up with is completely different from what they truly want. And then in that moment, you have to pivot. Nancy, I'm trying to think of an example. Our practitioners would know even more precisely of example. Do you have an example of where something went completely the opposite direction?
Sorry,
we'll write them down, Nancy. Yeah. We'll write them down for that dream conference of mine. We'll have them all written down.
Okay. Sorry.
I like that. It's not wrong. We pivoted. It's perfect. Thank you so much for joining us
Thanks,
today,
Rebecca.
And for sharing all your
and can I, sorry, if you can allow me, I would like to recognize one of the leaders of SBPC. I've seen him tonight. His name is Raider Danao. So
is he with us?
Can you, Kuya Buchay, can you quickly say hi?
Hi, Ma'am Nance.
Yeah. So
Hi,
he's the
Elene.
one who's
Hello.
he's the one who's talking in the video. He's the president of the organization in Papakulan. Thank you, Kuya Buchay, for joining tonight.
Thank you, Kuya. Thank you.
Thank you, Elene.
Thank you, Nancy. I didn't know that Kuya was with us. So one of the community leaders, the president from Kapakulan, right, is with us.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Kuya.
Oh, thank you. So
Thank
many
you.
of your colleagues from around the world for joining us. It's really wonderful to see so many people here. And yeah, thanks to you both. And of course to our BSL interpreters, Naomi and David, and our behind the scenes closed captioner, Kate. Thanks, everyone.